Walk out mid-argument, time stamp the silence. You've been taught your whole life that walking away is weakness, that finishing the fight earns you some invisible moral badge. But what if the strongest move in a high-stakes emotional standoff isn't the last word, but the last step? What if the most disarming power move is silence so precise? It slices through the noise like a blade. You think you're controlling the situation by staying, explaining, defending, outwitting, but that's the lie. You're staying because your ego can't handle the vacuum. You fear what they'll say after you leave. You fear the silence will indict you. But Epictetus warned you long ago. If someone provokes you, know that your mind is complicit in the disturbance. Every second you remain tethered to the heat, you confirm that your peace is negotiable. When you exit mid-argument, you're not quitting the battle, you're ending your participation in the illusion that there's something to win. And that act, that vanishing, becomes unforgettable. You time-stamp the silence, imprint it with finality, and without saying a word, you turn the argument into a moment they'll replay in their head 1,000 times, wondering what your silence meant, what truth they missed in your absence. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, and walking out is the rejection of their chaos on a cellular level. You're not storming off in drama, you're stepping out in mastery. You leave not because you're out of strength, but because you recognize the cost of spending strength on someone who's already decided not to hear you. You make them sit in the heat they started, alone. You steal the oxygen from their fire. Every word they toss after you lands in an empty room, echoing off walls that don't respond. And yes, it feels wrong at first. It feels like surrender, but it's not. It's discipline disguised as absence. It's the kind of inner fortress Seneca talked about, the one built not on dominance but detachment. You start to notice how silence rewrites the power dynamic. Not with noise, but with stillness. They want the show to go on. You cut the lights. They want the last word. You give them only space. The silence time stamps their failure to control you, and suddenly you're no longer part of the emotional machinery. You're an anomaly. You're the glitch in the script they rehearsed. They can't weaponize your silence. They can't manipulate your words. You've left nothing behind but your absence, and that haunts more than any argument ever could. Most people react, you vanish. Most people escalate, you evaporate. They're expecting you to match their rage, their clever insults, their spinning logic, but all they get is the quiet sound of you choosing yourself over the circus. And that silence? It echoes longer than any scream. It's not avoidance, it's the ultimate assertion that you are not available for emotional chaos. It's how you train your nervous system to seek calm over conquest. It's how you shift the story from, "How did we get here?" to, "Why did they walk away?" And that question sticks. It festers. It becomes a portal they fall into when they're alone, trying to reconstruct what happened and why you didn't stay to finish it. Because the truth is, you did finish it, you just didn't tell them. You didn't need to. You knew the argument wasn't about truth. It was about control. And you walked out when you saw that your presence was fueling a game you never agreed to play. This is not silence as retreat. This is silence as strategy. It's remembering that control isn't about overpowering. It's about opting out of unnecessary wars. You walk out not because you're weak, but because you understand the secret most people never learn. Not every fire deserves your breath. And when you turn and go, you're not leaving the room, you're leaving the version of yourself who thought staying was noble. And here's the hidden power that unfolds once you practice this form of stoic ghosting. You begin to understand how silence matures your emotions faster than any clever comeback ever could. You see how much of your past arguments were really just disguised pleas for validation, desperate attempts to prove your worth, defend your identity, justify your reaction, and once you drop those hooks, you walk out cleaner, lighter, unburdened. The people left behind may call you cold. Let them. They're still clinging to a script where drama equals connection. You've burned that script. You've replaced it with a stillness that Horace would call the golden mean, a steady, golden middle untouched by extremes. And if they ever come back asking why you left, asking what made you vanish, don't explain. Don't debrief the silence. Let them sit with it. Let the silence stay sacred. Time stamped. Final. Because once you explain, you start erasing the power of that moment. You start writing noise over your masterpiece of stillness. Leave it untouched. Let them wonder. Let the discomfort crack them open. Because the ones who truly want to understand will do the work. The rest will keep fighting phantoms. You've graduated from needing to win. You're no longer interested in being right. You're interested in being free. And the irony? That freedom is contagious. Your exit becomes a mirror. Some will see their own chaos reflected in it and begin to change. Others will curse you for breaking the loop they depend on. Either way, you've created a new rule in the universe. You are not available for pointless fires. You walk out mid-argument because you've already walked away from needing their approval. And every time you do it, you sharpen your awareness of which battles are worth showing up for, and which ones are best won by walking out with your spine straight and your soul quiet. So next time you're mid-argument and everything in you screams to stay, to shout, to explain, try the silence. Time-stamp it. Let the moment hang in the air like a ghost. See how loud silence can be when it's carrying the full weight of your inner clarity. Not everyone will get it, but those who do, they'll never forget it. They say silence is golden, but that's a lie. True silence is radioactive. It doesn't just glow, it mutates the dynamic. It reconfigures the emotional circuitry of everyone involved, especially when it's deployed with surgical precision, mid-conflict, mid-sentence, mid-emotional detonation. And here's the shocking part. Most people are so addicted to the noise that they'll do anything to fill it, even with lies, projection, or absurd justifications. But when you choose not to fill it, when you walk out and stamp that silence with your absence, you've not just ended the argument, you've redefined what power looks like. You become ungovernable, untouchable. It's the Marcus Aurelius kind of untouchable, the kind where you don't need to dominate others because you've already dominated your own impulses. Think of all the times you've stayed too long in a fight just to prove you're strong enough to handle it. Now consider the possibility that true strength is walking out the moment you realize the conversation has stopped being about resolution and started being about ego survival. That's when you freeze the frame. You make it unplayable. You turn the heat into a museum piece, an exhibit called "The Last Time I Let Chaos Borrow My Voice." And if you think people won't notice, think again. They always notice absence more than presence, especially when it disrupts the script. See, everyone has a mental blueprint of how arguments go. Voice rises, tempers flare, tension peaks, insults fly, and then, boom, either an explosion or a desperate apology. But when you walk out before that climax, you hijack the entire formula. You force an interruption in their emotional pattern, and now you're not just someone they argued with, you're the one who introduced them to the sound of their own unprocessed noise. Seneca would smirk at that, because he knew a man governed by impulse is already defeated. Your silence becomes a mirror they didn't ask for but can't unsee. And maybe they'll call you passive-aggressive. Maybe they'll try to shame you for not engaging. But what they're really doing is screaming into the void you left behind, hoping to summon you back into the game. You don't respond. You've leveled up. You've joined the rare class of people who understand that presence is a currency and not everyone has earned the right to spend it. Every time you walk out mid-argument, you're telling the world, I am not your emotional landfill. I do not recycle chaos. I'm not here to perform emotional labor for people who treat peace like a punching bag. And it's not just about romantic fights or family drama, it applies to everything. Office politics, fake friendships, debates with people who listen only to reload. You walk. You let the silence bloom like smoke from a blown-out candle. You let them sit in it. And while they're busy talking to your shadow, you're already somewhere else, preserving your energy like the Stoics preserved their sanity by refusing to feed the beast. Over time, this practice becomes muscle memory. You start sensing early when a conversation is veering into ego territory. You hear the shift in tone, the hunger in their voice, not for truth, but for domination. That's your cue. Not to push harder, not to explain clearer, but to exit. To make it unfinishable. To leave the emotional table before they even realize dinner was poisoned. And it drives people mad, but it also creates a sacred boundary that protects your soul from erosion. You're not ice cold, you're burning with discipline. You're not disconnected, you're hyper-aware of what doesn't deserve access. This is the art of psychological judo, Let them swing wildly while you step back and let gravity do the work. No need to block, no need to counter. Let their momentum collapse without resistance. That's what walking out mid-argument really is, a refusal to lend your life force to someone else's emotional storm. It's Epictetus laughing at the idea that you ever had to match someone else's dysfunction just to be seen. The truth is, you see yourself now. That's why you walk. That's why you leave the words dangling midair like cut wires. And don't underestimate how long that unfinished moment will live in their memory. The silence you stamped becomes lore. It gets mythologized. They'll tell the story to others, trying to rewrite it in their favor, but the ending will always be the same. You left. You didn't break. You didn't bite. You didn't burn down the bridge. You just stopped crossing it. And what's wild is that over time, people will start treating you differently. They'll tread lighter. They'll sense the sacredness of your boundary without you ever having to say a word. You'll walk into a room and people will feel the silence you carry, not as distance but as gravity. You become the one who doesn't play by the rules of chaos. You don't raise your voice, you raise the standard. And that shift, that transformation, it's irreversible. You're no longer a participant in every emotional ambush. You've become a sentinel of your own peace. And here's the final warning, the part no one tells you. Once you taste this kind of power, this kind of inner detachment, you'll start walking out of things you once begged to stay in. Arguments, relationships, toxic jobs, false friendships, anything that asks you to bleed so someone else can feel alive. You won't do it anymore. You'll start choosing frictionless solitude over destructive noise. You'll start measuring the value of a conversation by how little you have to recover from it. You'll notice how quiet rooms become your sanctuary, how peace becomes your baseline, how walking away becomes your revolution. And suddenly, you'll look back at the version of yourself who stayed in every fight just to feel seen, and you'll thank them for surviving, for learning, for handing you the keys to a life that no longer requires noise for validation. You'll know deep in your bones that silence was never about weakness. It was always about wisdom. And when you walk out next time, mid-sentence, mid-scream, mid-tear, you'll feel nothing but clarity. No regret, no fear, just power. Cold, clean, stoic power. So the next time you walk out, mid-sentence, mid-scream, mid-tear, you won't feel guilt or hesitation, only the quiet triumph of someone who chose peace over noise, who remembered their worth in the middle of chaos. And if that shift sparked something in you, then like this video, share it with someone who needs that silence too, and subscribe to the channel so you never forget how powerful it is to simply walk away.